Okay, so we're back for the second part of our Crusader Kings tutorial. In the first video, we kind of discussed some core concepts for feudal society. We explained the character interaction screen here. So we showed how we can kind of get around to look at our betters and our inferiors. Discussed a little bit of a concept of having an heir. We dealt with a couple of the alerts up here. We showed off how to find a character. We showed a couple of different map modes between the terrain map mode over here and the realms map mode. So they're actually mapped, I believe, to QWERTY. So you can kind of skip through them. W is the one that you'll spend most of your time on, which was realms. So what I'd like to do in this episode is I would like to explain a little bit more from these screens because there's just so much information on them. We want to deal with their remaining alerts that are still relevant. Then I want to go through every single one of these options along the top, which, in case you didn't notice as we went through them, with the exception of societies for some reason, has a tooltip to let you know that they start from F3 and work onwards. So F1 gives us our primary title and basically shows us their title view. F2 gives us their character view, so that's the one that you get when you click on Count Bethelio of Thurgau. F3 will show us our law. Sorry, let me try that again. F3 will show us our council. F4 will show us our laws. F5 shows us technology. F6 shows us military. F7 shows us intrigue. F8 shows us factions. F9 shows us religion. And I'm not sure if F10 does work. It does not. If you want to show societies, you need to click on the society tab. I don't know if it's actually bound to a hotkey. You won't use it that often, so it probably doesn't matter. Anyway, for now, let's press F3 and have a look at the council screen. And of course, by going to the council screen, I need to now describe what a council is. So, a council is the powerful people that exist within your domain. The other noble characters who exist within your domain, who you appoint effectively as advisors to run the realm. So your word is law. You're the Count of Thurgau, but you do enlist the help of other people to help you, to advise you on what you should do. Effectively, that's what it represents anyway. In this case, if you have a look at our councillors, you notice that 4 out of 5 of them have a little fist logo next to them just here, and I think we mentioned that in the previous video. That basically means that they're a powerful vassal and they expect to be included in this council. So whilst you can include pretty much anyone you like on the council, providing that they are a male, you can't put women on the council with a couple of exceptions. You can, for instance, put your wife as spy master, and you can later on in the game put women on the council. Right now, when we start in this period of history, with the laws that we have set, women are not allowed to pretty much do anything, can hold any power whatsoever. The only way that women get any power in this game is if their parent dies and doesn't leave a male heir, and then they actually get positions of power. So it's a very different way of playing. But yes, for the concept of the council screen here, these are our people who form our kind of imagine, if you think of like modern day politics, they form like cabinet ministers if you compare it to the British system of governance. Trying to think what the equivalent is in the United States, and I'm now kind of drawing a blank, but they're basically your chief of, like, you have like a chief of staff, like a PR officer, that sort of thing. Well, in this era, it's broken down into these particular roles, and each one of these roles maps back to a stat. So if you remember, if we hit F2, and take us back to the character screen. If you remember, we discussed these stats last time round. I'm just going to pause the game so I can cough. Excuse me. So yes, if you remember, we discussed that these stats belong to Count Bethelio here. On the right-hand side, we have state diplomacy, state marshals, state stewardship. So each one of these stats has a state score, and that score is generated by combining the personal stat of Count Bethelio with the stat of his councillors. So you can easily see that, right? By if we have a look at our Chancellor and hover over, you can see he's got the little. They've all got the icons next to them to tell you what they do. So our Chancellor is all about diplomacy. His skill is based on diplomacy. Now, in this particular screen, you can hover over the stat, and it tells you whether or not they're good or bad. So I kind of disagree with this, because it tells us that Bishop Luitbrand is considered to be a competent diplomat. That's kind of not true. Like I said in the previous video, stats are graded from 0 up to, well, they can go higher than 20, kind of. But stats are basically, 20 is great, 0 is extremely bad and completely unskilled, and 10 is average, really, because it's in the middle. So when it says competent just means average. Whereas with 14, it also says competent. Gotzello down here has 15. He's considered a competent scholar. So, I mean, yeah, it's saying competent for a lot of these people. Whereas our Spymaster, you'll note, and more on this later, but our Spymaster is an incompetent schemer because he only has 2 intrigue. So each one of these characters we preloaded the game with. They were just kind of assigned to us. And we have some influence on this. We can appoint the people that we want to form as our advisors. Now, there are a couple of factors that go into who you would and would not appoint to your council. Stats is quite obviously the first. So we would ideally like all of these to say 20, because then they would pass on a great score for us. So again, look at our Chancellor. He has a diplomatic score of 10. We can hit the F2 key to go back to Count Bethelio, and we can see that we have a state diplomacy score of 21. And in fact, the tooltip tells us 11 of that is coming from Bethelio's personal stat. Notice that now that we've quit and reloaded the game, it's updated. We used to have 8 in state diplomacy, but we picked the focus of carousing, which gave us +3. So now we're up to 11. So it takes our personal score, which is based on, the focus that we're running. Sometimes it can be affected by other things like statuses or traits or whatnot. So that's currently 11, and it's being added to the 10 from our Chancellor. So if we hit F3 again, that'll take us back to our Councillor. And you can see each person is basically responsible for something different. So our Chancellor is responsible for how do I describe this? They're kind of like the statesman of your realm. They're the person who influences things based on relationships, but most importantly, their most important skill is this one here. So they can perform statecraft, they can improve diplomatic relations, they can sow dissent, but their most important skill is fabricate claims. So in this game, you can't just go to war. I can't, as the County of Thurgau, declare war on the County of Zurichgau just because I feel like it. I need to have a reason. Now, I already do have reasons right now, because Zurichgau is a neighbour to me, so I could declare a border war. There's another reason that we'll go into either in this video or in the next one. We could declare a de jure war against them, but more on that later. But we need a reason, and sometimes there just isn't a reason. So, for instance, if I wanted to declare war on Lorraine, I just can't. Right-clicking on him and scrolling down to declare war in the list, it's greyed out. And the reason given is Count Bethelio must have a valid Cassius Belli to declare war. So again, if you played other Paradox games and Paradox systems, this won't be unfamiliar to you. The idea of a Cassius Belli is baked into quite a lot of Paradox titles. But if you are new, then a Cassius Belli is just a reason. It's just a reason to go to war. So you need a valid reason. And by valid, I'm doing air quotes, bunny ears, or whatever you want to call them, which is great for radio, of course. But yeah, it's kind of a valid reason to go to war. We can manufacture one, right? We can fabricate it. If we go back to our council, you can click these buttons, by the way. So this little crown is the council. So if you prefer navigating with your mouse, do so. I tend to try and use the hotkeys where I can. So F3 is the right one. I'll try and teach you them as we go along. So yeah, we want to fabricate claims, and based on our Chancellor's skill, if we hover over that, we can see claim fabricated is a 3.97% chance yearly. He also has a noble infuriated 4.4% yearly chance. So there's basically just under 4% chance that yearly he'll do what we ask him to and manage to fabricate a claim. We're going to talk about claims in greater detail, but it'll give us a reason to go to war with someone. Or there's a nearly 4.5% chance that he will screw up in his attempt to create a claim for us and piss someone off. For right now, I am going to choose to set... Well, no, I think we're going to change our council round in just a moment. So let's leave that for now. Next up, we have a marshal. And the marshal is the guy who's in charge of our troops. Our marshal's not bad. I'm just going to quickly go to find characters and search court, sort by marshal. We can't be a marshal to ourselves. We're currently the best person in the kingdom to do the job, but we can't be the marshal for ourselves. At least not that I'm aware. So we'll leave him. He's actually our most competent marshal right now. So he has a number of jobs. I'm just going to tell you the job that I would pick for each of these characters right now. You can go into more detail if you want to change these around, and maybe we will as we go through it. I don't want to make this tutorial be a blow-by-blow of every single option, because frankly this game is enormous. So I'd rather give you just like a quick and general, get you up and running. Actually, there is no such thing as a quick and general, get you up and running in a Paradox title, but I'll give you a quick idea of what the core concepts are. So for this guy, the Chancellor, it's fabricate claims. For the Marshal, the number one hands down ability is to train troops. And that increases your levy size. Remember, we said levy size is the amount of soldiers that you can raise. So just by putting this guy in a county, he gives us plus 35% levy size in that county and increases their reinforcement rate by 70%. He also has a possible outcomes, which means that there is a 22.85% chance, this is all based off his stats, each year that we'll get levy reinforcements, which would be good. That's just a, hey, I found extra troops for you. It's awesome. There's a 2.63% chance yearly that a noble will prevent him from doing what he's trying to do. So we're going to, I think, train troops in Thurgau, because that's where we currently have the most levy already. So because it's a percentage-based buff, we're going to click train troops. And then that kind of changes the map, as you can just see, to show you where we can select. So all of the grey, we can't go, because the rest of the world we don't own. We can't train troops where we don't own. But these two green territories we do, so we can select one of those. We're going to select Thurgau. And that places this little dude there with his hands behind his back. That apparently means he's training troops. So he's been assigned a job, effectively. Next up, we have a steward. And stewards are basically in charge of administering the realm, making sure that people pay tax, filling out all of the documents that are relevant to make things happen. So like there's stuff like administer realm so we can use administer realm to increase our domain size. So in the top right you can see domain size. You can also see it on Bethelio's character screen. And this is just how much stuff we can own before people get annoyed about it. Just view it that way for now. This is basically the second button is what you're using for mostly, which is collecting taxes. If we apply him to a region to collect taxes, there is a 35% modifier to the region that he goes to collect tax. There is a potential outcome of 7.61% chance each year that he'll get a special tithe, which means we'll just get extra money. And there's a 2.63% chance that peasants will attack him and potentially kill him. So there's some risk to this one. But he's a lowly vassal. We don't really care about him, and we can make more money. So let's make him collect taxes. He can also research economy and oversee construction. They both have their place. In a particular playthrough, you might want to do that. So next up, and again, I should probably describe, the marshal uses marshal, the steward uses stewardship. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory in a way, but like, let's point out, those are the characters they're mapped to. The icons match the ones that are on your character screen. So we're going to collect taxes. I think Thurgau probably currently pays us the amount of tax. We can find out without having to click through all of these provinces by going to the ledger. You can go down here into the bottom left, and there's a bunch of buttons down here, or you can simply press the comma key on your keyboard, and that will bring it up. So it's this little button here that's like the little bar charts, or you can press the comma key, whichever one you prefer. Currently we're on page 1, which shows us their domain, which is actually the one that we want. And we can see that the Barony of Rheineck is paying us 4.25 gold, whereas the Barony of Chur is paying us 3.18. So placing him, again, it's a percentage-based boon. We're going to put it in the Barony of Rheineck. There is tons and tons of information available via the ledger, and as the game goes on, it will become ever more populated and ever more invaluable, to be honest. You can click the next buttons, or I believe you can use the left and right arrows on your keyboard. This is one of the few places I prefer to use the mouse. Like, literally, as I said, you can. There's just so much stuff on here. I'm not even going to go through it. I think I'd encourage you to go through it as your game progresses and see what changes. But the domain one on the first page, really useful, shows you your tax, your fort level, and your levy. That's just straight up useful throughout the game, like forever. So you can close X or hit escape. Right. Let's go back. F3 takes us back to the council. So we were doing steward. We're now into spy master. So your spy master is the person who protects you from being killed by assassins, or roots out, nefarious schemes that could otherwise be conducted against you, and likewise is the guy who is, or girl, who is most responsible for doing those things to other people. So the skullduggery and the intrigue, that kind of thing. Quite interestingly, in the start of our playthrough, we are going to conduct some skullduggery against our spy master. Because he's a vassal. He's got a really bad intrigue score, but there's another reason, and we're going to go into that in a little while, or quite a bit later actually, because we're going to go through these menu options first. But just bear in mind, this guy here, he's not going to be around for much longer. We're going to do away with him. The court chaplain, he's your guy. Oh, in fact, yeah, sorry. Spy master wise, I tend to leave mine on scheme, which is the default. So actually, let's do collect taxes for the steward and put him in Thurgau. And then I tend to leave my spy master on scheme. So if you click him, that just means he's automatically in your capital, and that means that he reduces the amount of plots that can be used against you. He also discourages vassals from joining factions, stuff like that. Court chaplain. This is the guy who is super religious. He can do improve religious relations if you want to play the religion game. He can proselytize to try and convert people to your religion. He can research cultural tech, because again, each one of these kind of has a tech skill. Tech we'll talk about in a bit. I wouldn't bother with tech, just mostly ignore it and click it when you need to. We'll discuss that later. And hunter apostates, so I tend to just leave mine on hunter apostates. Heresies can sometimes pop up, and then you get to burn them as witches, which is sometimes useful, sometimes annoying, but always keeps the church happy, so don't worry. So that's the first tab within the council tab. So you might notice at the very top of the screen we've got these main blue tabs, and then within the tabs themselves there's further tabs because paradox. So the next tab in here is the minor titles tab. Now, we kind of had a brief look at this in the first video. These are just titles that you can give out that mostly are purely for opinion benefits. So they make characters like you more because they feel important when they're given a role. So like Master of the Horse, Master of the Hunt, High Almoner. These are all like things that you can just give out because it makes people feel that they're important. So the Master of the Horse, it says, this office dates all the way back to the Roman Republic, and in an era where a horse is a symbol of power, it's still very important. Although the Master of the Horse delegates the actual day-to-day running of the actual stables, much of the prestige of this office comes from the responsibility for the stud. Again, it doesn't have any effect. You hand it out to somebody, it makes them like you +5, and costs some salary and prestige. I mean, don't worry about it. You just hand these out when you want people to like you. That's the way to view this. So the only difference really are commanders, which have already been assigned for us in this game. So Manfred and Thuad Merez, I assume. These are the people who are allowed to currently command our armies, and they have a martial score of 13 and 10. People with high martial make the best commanders. The other one that matters is court tutor, and that only kind of partly matters, but they become your default person who trains your children. We'll discuss that in a later video. For now, we're not going to set it to anybody because I know that we're going to hire somebody, or we're going to bring someone into our realm shortly who will be pretty good at doing that. And then designated regent. That's the person who will carry on running your affairs if you are otherwise incapacitated. There's a few different ways you can become incapacitated in this game. You could get the incapable trait. That makes you unable to do anything. That's like the worst trait in the game. You could become imprisoned. You could go on a pilgrimage. You could go into hiding. You could die. That's a pretty big incapacitation. And you could die and leave your realm in the hands of a 4-year-old who is not old enough to rule yet. Not until they're 16. So those are a few examples off the top of my head. There might even be a couple of more. But yeah, those are scenarios where the realm is no longer under your direct character control, so someone else steps in to do it. It could still be somebody of your dynasty, but they're not a playable character. And like I said, it's designated. If you don't designate someone, it will pick someone. But it's wise to designate someone. And being the designated regent, when you hover over it, it should tell you. Gives a +10, so it's like one of the best things to hand out in terms of making somebody like you a lot more. So we're just going to click that, and then we're going to sort the list by opinion. And I'm just going to pick the person who likes me the most, which is Gebhard. And that's because, given that they're going to be our designated regent, we want them to be a loyal subject. So we're going to pick Gebhard, and that's going to make him like... He currently likes us 58. He's going to like us 68 after this. And these rest of these, I'm just going to kind of hand out. So Gebhard's going to get Master of the Horse as well. Master of the Hawk can go to Frederick. High Almoner's going to go to Luthbrand because he's a bishop. Cupbearer can go to... It doesn't really matter. Let's make our son like us a bit more. Court tutor we're not going to assign, as I said, and our commander's already assigned. So you can also click auto assign, and then it will auto assign your commanders based on the best martial score. I prefer to do it myself, but to each his own. Next is the My Council tab. This tells you what the current position your councillor holds with regard to council law. It's irrelevant to this stage of the game, but I will very quickly describe what it means. How long have we been going? Cool, blimey, we're nearly at half an hour already. So, along the top, you can see these values here. There's a heart, there's an apple, a star, a prayer symbol, and a thumbs down. And they're basically the opinions that your councillors can currently hold of your rule. So right now, we have 3 people with apples, which means pragmatist. And that basically means that they will always vote for things that make them... Well, all councillors will always vote for things that make themselves more powerful. And they will pretty much always vote against things that will make themselves less powerful. That's a nice, easy thing to understand. So a pragmatist will basically do that. They'll pick whatever makes sense as long as it's going to suit them. And again, you can hover over these and it'll tell you from on the tooltip. A zealot is basically somebody who wants you to always do good religious stuff. If you're attacking infidels, that's going to make them happy. They'll agree to that. A glory hound doesn't like it when you attack people who are less powerful than you, because that's not glorious. They want you to attack people who are more powerful, because they want to see you increase the size of the realm, but they're also all about like glory and prestige. A loyalist will vote with you, generally, as long as it's not going to make them less powerful. And a malcontent, which is the thumbs down, is going to vote against you pretty much in all circumstances. Unless they stand to personally benefit from it. So a loyalist will vote against you where they get weaker, but a malcontent will vote against you unless they're going to get stronger. And then everybody kind of in the middle has an agenda to fulfill. You also have this enforce realm peace button, but we currently don't have the ability to use that, and we won't do for some time. So let's just ignore that button. And then lastly, the tab has Liege Council. So this is the council for our boss. Now, if you remember from the first video, we set the ambition to become a councillor. So if you also remember, our boss is a duke. It's Duke... what was his name? Duke Hanibi. So we one day want to be on his council. So much like we have councillors here who... fulfill things for us and get to vote on certain things, or at least they would if we had law to do that. We'll talk about that next. We want to be on his council where we get a say on things and can influence the way that his realm is run, because we're included underneath him, so it directly influences us. Hopefully that makes sense. How are we doing for time? Okay, 28 minutes. Right, next tab. You can press it, it's a little hammer, or you can press F4 to open or close it. So this is the laws tab, and it contains an awful lot of stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Again, you can work some of this out. The first tab is about inheritance. So that's the inheritance law that you have as a well, right now as a county, but to be honest, for the start of the game, everyone pretty much, with a few exceptions, follows a law called Gavelkind, a succession law called Gavelkind. There's also a gender law that's applied to that succession law. So our county is currently a hereditary absolute county, and it is an agnatic cognatic Gavelkind, which is an awfully long way of saying that the preference is that male heirs inherit our titles and hold positions of power, and that it is based on the eldest of the male heir to do that, and that the top title goes to the eldest heir first, and then the remaining titles are divvied up between any remaining male heirs. That's a very complicated concept for you to wrap your head around. We are going to describe Gavelkind again and again, I think, and probably even maybe do a video all about it specifically. But for now, you can kind of get it by hovering over the tooltips. But yeah, basically what you need to know is right now. So it shows us our succession here. Right now, the succession will work as if we die, our titles will go to our son. If he dies, the next line of succession is his son. And if he dies, the next line of succession is his youngest son. Gavelkind only really affects your sons. It doesn't affect your grandchildren. So right now we don't have any problem with our succession because we have a single son. That's the best scenario in many ways for Gavelkind to work because you don't fracture your kingdom. Again, we're going to come back to this concept. I'm not just going to leave it hanging. But your kingdom can end up fragmented because of your succession law, so you need to be careful with it. But when you start the game, you'll start with Gavelkind. You won't really get a say in it. And until you can change your laws, which won't be until later in the game, you'll just have to learn to live with it. So we'll discuss some strategies for dealing with Gavelkind. So for now, that's what it means. Don't worry too much about it. There are little shields above these tabs. If you click on them, they show you the laws for the different for the different tiers. So we default to showing county law. Then there's ducal law because we have a liege. So this is our boss's law, and that applies to us too. Not for inheritance, interestingly, but the rest of the laws cascade down because he doesn't care what our laws are. We take his laws. And then at the top there's kingdom. So these are royal laws. Again, don't worry too much about that. It won't affect you too much at the start of the game. So the next tab within the laws is realm laws. So these laws control how how do you describe this? The things that we can and cannot do, I guess, as a ruler. And it says here at the top, the crown laws of the Kingdom of Middle Francia apply in the county of Thurgau. So we're not powerful enough to set crown law. Our boss's boss has the absolute say. So if we click on the Kingdom of Middle Francia, we can see he is in charge of the law for investiture, controlled realm inheritance, vassal war declaration, and centralization. If we click again one tier down onto the duchy, so our direct boss, the guy who lives over here, he has to take the crown laws from his boss and has slightly less control, but he can set his own centralization laws, his own status for women, and his own revocation of titles. And again, we click down, we can see that we have the same laws as well, but we have to take some of the laws from the crown. Notice we are not in control of any centralization law, but we can set some rights for women. We can't right now because we don't have any technologies that would allow us. We could set our own revocation of titles law. That's sort of useful, though I don't expect us to be a count that long, so it won't matter. And administration law. Again, it's locked behind technology. We can't really do much with it right now. Revocation of title is the only one we can change. Revocation of title is the most dangerous one to us. So, what is revocation of title? We said we have titles. We have the title of the county of Thurgau and of the church of Chur. At the moment, we could set ourselves to allow revocation of titles, and then our vassals, so the mayors below us and the bishops, we could take their title away from them and make them unlanded. We could strip them of their title and take the title for our own. That would be very good for us because we would gain more territory, we would gain more stuff in effect, and we'd get all of the money and all of the soldiers for ourselves. But it'd be bad because everybody would view it as tyrannical. Just taking a title away in this era is seen as being a very tyrannical thing to do, and it will make your vassals hate you and everyone around you distrust you. So it's not something to do lightly. Likewise, like I said, if I click on the Duchy of Armenia, he could also set revocation of title to allowed. And that's dangerous, because if our liege, because he's our boss, can revoke title, he could theoretically take our title away. And if you remember, I either said it in the first video or in this one, if we lose our title, it's game over. We need a title in our dynasty to be able to continue to play. If our liege decides to revoke our title, we will be given the option to accept or to raise our military and fight against him. As a player character, you will always, always, always fight. You might not always win, but you should always fight, because otherwise that's it, game over. Thanks for playing. That's all we're going to say about that for now. Obligations. So what is obligation law? Obligation law is setting what your inferiors or your lessers are required to do. So currently we're looking at the ducal law. We need to look at the county law for ourselves. So this sets what the different tiers of our society must provide us with. No choice, they must do it. And that's important because of what we said in the first video about when we mentioned diplomacy and making people like us. It's really, really important that people like you in this game. Particularly your vassals. So the people beneath you, you need to keep them happy. Why do you need to keep them happy? You need to keep them happy because, number one, they are only obligated. So a vassal relationship is an obligation. They are only obligated to provide you with so much stuff based on your law. So currently, if we hover over the noble obligation, we can see that it's currently set to balanced noble obligations. This law governs how much tax and levies that the gentry in the realm are obliged to contribute. The gentry tend to favour paying taxes over making troops available to their liege. The modifiers for a balanced one are plus 22 vassal tax, plus 40 to noble vassal min levy, and minus 40 to noble vassal max levy. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means that they are obliged to, as a bare minimum, pay us 20% of everything they make. The reason that opinion counts is because if a character does not like us, so we haven't discussed opinions yet, and we perhaps should. Let's discuss that. Let's take a minor detour to discuss opinions. Let's click on F2 and take a look at Count Bethelio. To the top right of Count Bethelio is the portrait of our liege, and then just to the right of our liege there are two little boxes. One has a -9 in it and one has a green 10. So if we hover on the very top one, that's our opinion of Duke Hanibi. So our opinion of our boss is -9. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's written in that tooltip that tells you why that matters. One is, we're -40 because we want a seat on a council. Our opinion of the Duke doesn't really matter because we're playing as this character, so you can decide what you want to do. And like I said, role play it. You can decide where to strike vengeance or where to make friends. The bottom number, however, does matter because that's Duke Hanibi's opinion of Count Bethelio, i.e. our boss's opinion of us. That matters because it will change the way that he interacts with us. If he really likes us, then he might not take our title away. So it's a good idea to keep your boss happy. And that value is green because it's in the positive. If it's in the negative, it goes red. And it's a scale of 100 either way. So a -100 means a character hates us, despises us, and can think of nothing worse. A +100, or a green 100, just means that they love us. They think that we're the best thing ever, and they just want to be friends. So that gives you an example. And these opinions are influenced by so many different things in the game, like your traits. In this case, Duke Bethelio likes us because the both of us happen to be gregarious. Share a same trait. And he also likes us because our state diplomacy score is quite good. It's 21, so it's giving us a modifier. But tons and tons and tons of things can influence that stat in the game. Let's click back on F4 and discuss what that means. So, where we saw that for Count Bethelio, those two little boxes appear for every character in the game. Every character has an opinion of another character. Now, in most cases, they'll just be indifferent. But, again, it's affected by traits, and it's affected by character interactions. So if we do lots of nice things for our liege, he'll like us. Likewise, if we're really nice to our vassals, they'll like us. If we're really tyrannical, they'll hate us. If our vassals do not like us, they are only obligated, which is why this is called obligations, to provide us with the minimum levy requirement, which just so happens to be 40% right now. So that's all they have to give us. Or whatever it is, plus 40%, basically. We can shift these obligations left or right. And on the left-hand side, there's more tax. On the right-hand side, there's levy. The way that you want to shift these things depends on what kind of character you're talking about. So, in terms of nobles, we want to shift things to the right. We always want to shift towards the right, because we want nobles to provide us with more levy instead of more tax. In essence, you always want to shift it in the way that people don't want you to shift it. They have a preference for you to do it the other way. So nobles don't want to give away your troops, because troops are their power base. They want to pay you money instead. We want to shift it to the right because we want them to give us more troops. That makes them weaker because we're taking more of their troops away, which is good because we can control them easier. And it also makes us stronger because we've got more troops to have wars with. So shifting it to the right is good. But shifting it to the right will give them a negative opinion for doing so. So it's a balancing act. The maximum vassal levy is the maximum amount they will give us. So if a vassal likes us 100%, they will give us more than if they like us 10%. And they will give us more definitely than if they like us minus 50. If they like us minus 50, they will give us the minimum that they're required to. If they like us 100, they might give us the maximum that they're provided. So making your vassals like you is very, very important. So just quickly to run through this, the concept is the same. Burghers are below that. They're basically like your mayors, your city people. You want them to pay you more tax instead of levy. They prefer to pay you more levy. You take the opinion modifier for making them pay more in tax, but you'll make more money because burghers make more money. And I can demonstrate this, right? If I click on Thurgau and I click on this city, you can see this city here makes 23.13 gold. If I click back on Thurgau and I click on the county capital of Rheineck, you can see it only makes 7.68 gold because it's a castle. Whereas a city deals with like trade and making money that way. A castle deals with troops, so it doesn't make as much money. So burghers run cities, nobles run castles. So nobles, their primary resource is levy, so they want to hoard that. And cities, burghers, their primary resource is money, so they want to hoard that. Let's press F4 again. Church. So this is how much the church has to provide you with, and you can again shift it one way or the other. The church tends to provide paying a mix of troops and taxes. They like it to be balanced. The church is an interesting one. You perhaps actually want to require the church to pay you more. Depending on what's going on, you might want to get your church to pay more levy than tax. And the reason for that is priests only pay tax to their liege if they like their liege more than they like the Pope. So let's have a quick look at our vassals. We can see Lutbrand here likes us 48. So he is paying us 5.1 yearly income in tax. He likes the Pope, which is the other value on the left, 35. And so because he likes us more, he's paying us the tax. But quite often, religious characters will just like the Pope more than they like you because you're not paying them any interest. This guy likes us because he's on our council. We've made him a chancellor. We've made him a court physician. We've made him high almoner. We've thrown tons of stuff at this guy, so he thinks that we're great. But if he was just a normal bishop in our realm, he probably wouldn't like us that much, and therefore he'd be paying his money to the Pope. So the reason that we would want to shift things potentially away from taxes is because I take the attitude of that's money leaving my realm. I'd rather it just not leave my realm at all than go to the Pope. And the reason for that is because if characters retain their money, they will spend it on their holdings, and they will make their holdings more powerful, which benefits us indirectly, if that makes sense. And then the last one, I haven't really had much to play with, but it's tribal. I assume it only really affects us if we have any tribal elements within our society. So tribal chiefs tend to prefer favouring their liege with a balanced mix again. We don't have any tribes people under us right now. I guess we could if we went and fought Saxony, or maybe even Bavaria. No, they're feudal. Yes, they're Germanic. So yeah, I mean that's a quick rundown of obligations. And then the last one is council. Now this is council law, and this determines what a council is in charge of. So if you remember when we were on F3, we had a council. These guys. Same happens to be the same guys who sit on here, but it shows us their opinion. If we go back to F4 and we look at the council law, this is what that council would get to vote on. Right now they don't get to vote on anything because council power is abolished. But we could change that if we wanted to, by clicking the empower button. There's literally no reason for us to do that right now. It just makes our council more powerful and means that whenever we want to do something it becomes harder. So we don't want to share power. We want to be a bit more of an autocrat if we can get away with it. As the game progresses and our realm becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, we will not get away with having no council power. You will get nobles begin to demand more and more power. And as your nobles get more powerful themselves, they'll be in more of a position to demand that from you. So it becomes, again, a balancing act of how you can keep your vassals happy and how much power you can retain yourself without having to give it away. But you will invariably need to give some away as things go on. Right, so that is all of laws. How are we doing for time? 47 minutes, crikey. Let's see if we can whiz through these last few ones. Well, we can definitely whiz through this next one. If we press F5, this is the technology screen. So, technology spreads based on the people around you having technology. So, if Bavaria has technology we don't, it will spread to us. That's a thing. You can also set your councillors to do technology-based things, and it will slightly speed up technology. There are decisions that can affect technology, and there are events that can affect technology. Don't worry about technology. Technology happens all by itself. When you finally get the option to do something with technology, you'll get an alert. You can click it, then you can spend your technological points. This button here is the invest button. Currently we don't have any points, so we can't spend anything. But when you get points, you can spend them, and spending on technology makes your stuff better. It really is as bare bones and as simple as that. I mean, there's probably a way you could number crunch this to completely optimize it, but to be honest, it's really not worth your time. You can click the button to see spread. So clicking that button there for religious customs shows us what the current technological spread looks like. Again, you don't really get any control over that. So, I mean, it's kind of pointless. I'm just going to press W to go back to the realm map mode. It's kind of pointless. At least to me. If you feel differently, you can leave a message, I suppose. But technology is useful. It's just that you don't have a great deal of control in speeding it up or slowing it down. At least not to my experience. I just kind of let it do its thing, and then when I get points, I spend them. Good technological things to spend your money on when you do get it, or to spend your technological points on, are legalism. That allows you to change your laws. Tolerance is... well, they're all helpful in their own right. But in particular, legalism lets you do laws. Stuff in the military tab makes your various military things better. Economy, having improved keeps and castle infrastructure can improve your levy. Cities and trade practices can increase the amount of money that you make. Construction makes you build things faster. Shipbuilding lets you do more ships. We're landlocked, so it's not going to affect us if we're following along with this playthrough. Noble customs makes vassals like you more. Religious customs makes the priests like you more. Popular customs makes your city vassals like you more. Majesty chains is good. That affects your short reign years. So like short reign is like a penalty towards having a new ruler, and it takes time for people to start to trust the new ruler. So when we die, our son will get a short reign penalty against him. And tolerance like just changes the different mechanics between like cultures not liking one another. So say we get an Italian to come serve in our court, for instance, people won't like him as much because he's Italian and we're German. So yeah, there's a ton of, you can hover all of these things and it'll tell you what it does. Don't worry about technology. When you get your points, spend them whenever you want to spend them on. Like I said, laws are good, military's good, money is good, technology for like building, getting more levy is good. So just hover over it and decide based on what's available. You don't like, you'll see these progress as the game goes on. These little gears spin, and then you can press the button and it makes the values go up. So that's technology. Press F6. Military. This is the screen where you raise and dismiss your levies. It's also where you hire mercenaries. It's where you can see what it costs you. And it's where you can see what your vassals currently possess. So, yeah, I'm not really going to go into this. It really is as straightforward as that. You press this button to raise your levies. You press this button to dismiss your levies. We'll definitely be discussing this in a later video because we'll do war and everything. You can see the relative strength and vassals, and it kind of shows you how many troops you'll be provided and why. Mercenaries, if you click on the mercenaries tab, this allows you to hire mercenaries. Currently we can't really hire much because we don't have any gold really to speak of. There's a cost on the left. This is the cost to hire the mercenaries. Then there's a cost in small just under here. This is the cost to maintain them per month. We'll discuss this later as well. Holy orders, they're kind of like mercenaries, but not. Allies in wars just shows you who your allies are. And then there is fleet levies. Again, not going to talk about fleet levies. That's raising ships to move people about. We're landlocked. We're not going to be going in the sea anytime soon. Retinues on the far left. These are like standing armies. So you can hire a retinue that will always be around, and therefore you always have someone ready to fight at a moment's notice. That will become clear when we talk about war later on. Army levies, just to break this down for you, there's those from your domain and those from your vassals. So from the domain, these are our personal levies. They belong to us, and they will always be recruited at full strength. And then there are vassal levies. They belong to our vassals. Personal levies cost us monthly upkeep. If I raise my levies, it will cost me X gold per month. If I raise my vassal levies, my vassals pay for the upkeep. Though in the long term, that will piss my vassals off. So leaving your vassals' levies raised for too long will definitely bite you in the bum. So try not to do that. Again, it affects their opinion of you. And eventually, that could make them not like you and want to kill you. And to rise up in rebellion against you. And you definitely don't want that. So now hit F7. And this is the Intrigue tab. We've kind of already seen this briefly when we were recruiting a court physician. So in this screen, you get access to all these decisions here. Some of them you start with the game. Some of them get generated when you get various events and when you get to various points of the game. So right now we have a couple of options that are enabled, like invite a noble to court or present a debutante. We're not going to do either of those right now, but you can hover over them and they kind of tell you what they do and what their costs are. Yeah, these are just events. Like perhaps the events of note are to borrow gold from the Jewish merchants. So you can borrow money from the Jewry, and it basically gives you 300 gold. But it will make your temple vassal opinion -10. So in other words, all priests in the game will dislike you by -10%, because, or by a value of -10, I should say, just because they don't like the fact that you've borrowed money from the Jews. Another option then becomes available if you activate borrow 300 gold from the Jewish merchants. You will then get another decision to repay the loan, which will then be 350 gold. It's not affected by time. You can take that option whenever you like. You can pay it back whenever you like. So it's actually a really powerful thing, particularly in the early game. And like I said, like it doesn't accrue interest, so the interest is always 50 gold. So it's actually a really good option. And paying it off means that this borrow 300 option will come back, because you can only do this once. You can't borrow 300 then borrow 300. But yeah, that will return this decision to your tree, and it will make the temple vassal people like you again. The other option you get if you borrow the 300 gold from the Jewish merchants is to expel the Jewry. So you can click on that. You lose prestige for doing so. You gain some more money, but yeah, you expel all Jews from your kingdom, and that will have a negative tax modifier, negative diplomacy modifier, and I think it also affects your technology. I don't think that's listed in the tooltip, but I think it slows the speed of your tech. And then after an amount of time, I don't recall, eventually you'll get an event that allows you to invite them back. It should be pointed out that the loan that you can take does persist across characters, so when your liege dies, your loan does move on to your heir. You don't just get to wipe the debt that way. Okay, so that's decisions, and then below it there are plots. So this is where stuff is done for schemes in the game. So you can see here there's click to choose a plot, and we can plot to kill all of these characters for various different reasons. I largely don't trigger plots from the plot menu. Normally I trigger a plot by selecting the character themselves. So if I were to click into Thurgow, click onto Count Bethelio, click on my son, right click, and I actually can't plot against my own son because you can't do that anymore. Let's click vassals instead. Click on Looper, because we are actually going to kill him. Right click him, we can plot to kill, click plot to kill, and then it gives us the option to click do it. If we clicked do it, it would add the plot to this screen here. We will describe plots in a future video because we're already at an hour and I've not even finished going through all of these tabs. So we're not going to unpause in this session. I am very sorry. We will unpause in the next one, I promise. So that's the intrigue view. There are known plots. So this is where plots that you know about, be they against you or someone you know, will appear. It shows you who is doing the plot, what the plot is, who the target is, and who's backing it. You can check this box here that says auto stop plots. I always have that unchecked. What that means is your spy master will, if he finds out about a plot, he will confront people and tell them, stop, you're being naughty. And if they choose to listen, they will just do so. I leave that off and just check this myself, because you can use the fact that people are plotting to blackmail them in turn, and I always prefer that as an option, or to throw them in prison because you have a legitimate reason to do so. If someone's plotting to kill you, no one will complain if you just throw them in prison. If you throw somebody in prison with no reason whatsoever, then people will think you're tyrannical. So I personally find it useful to leave that off. You get more options, but if you don't want to be bothered with the plotting system, then just set that to auto. It stop plots, find the best spy master you can afford, and plonk them into power. There's the prisoners tab. When you capture somebody, they get placed here. And then they're in your dungeon, and then you get various things that you can do to them, and you can equally ransom them back for money. And then lastly, there's the threats. So this just shows you the people who are considered a threat to you right now. Currently there isn't anybody, so we don't see anybody in that tab. More on that when it becomes apparent. Press F8. Factions. So currently we can see factions within our own county and factions within the duchy. There aren't any right now. There will be later in a future video. Factions are kind of different to plots. Plots are like where you decide, I want to kill someone, and then you recruit people to back that plot, and it's all very nefarious and behind closed doors, and you're trying to get away with it. Factions are where someone might want to do something that's I was going to say heretical. Heretical is probably the wrong word, but definitely against, like, rebellious. Definitely against certain characters or certain realms, and definitely, like, if it's within, say, the Duchy of Almania, we could have a faction that pops up where other vassals of our liege want to change something. So it's more overt. It's more in the open. And a faction can decide to do things like go knock on the liege's door and basically tell him, hey, I'd like you to change the law, please. I don't like it. Whereas a plot is very much behind the scenes. It's about killing people and stuff like that. A faction is getting people to get on the same side as you, agree to do something, and back it with force. So it's much more overt. It's less subtle, and it's kind of a threat. So it's kind of like saying, I, as your vassal, have managed to get other vassals to agree with me, and if you don't do so, there'll be a fight. Again, more on that later. F9 shows us religion. Not really going to go into religion. It's a game within itself. I don't do too much of it. At least not in the playthroughs that I've done so far. You can really you can really play around with this and play around with the vassal bishop system. Try and get involved. Like when the Crusade stuff happens, that's the bit that you'll get involved in mostly, or at least the bit that I will teach you. If you want to go and read more into the religion system, that's probably advisable. I've not played around with it enough to tell you the nuances, to be honest. I can tell you that moral authority is kind of like how powerful a faith currently is. So this is how powerful the Catholic faith is. If they lose a lot of holy wars, their moral authority will go down. If they win a lot of holy wars, their moral authority will increase. That has certain perks, particularly if you're a religious realm and you're doing lots of religious things and you want to be a religious character. So yeah, it does have an effect. There is also saints. We click on that button there. People can be declared saints. I've had saints declared for like some of my characters. Gives you like cool perks and stuff like that. College of Cardinals. Again, this is like a mini game all within itself. You can jostle with voting and powers and things to try and get people on the seats to be cardinals and maybe even eventually become pope. Becoming pope, of course, is powerful because they've got quite a lot of influence and get their own. It's like a mini game within itself, to be honest. So you can play around with that. In the opening phases, we don't have enough money, enough power, enough influence to really get much out of this, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. Maybe I will do a future video specifically around all the religion stuff that I know about. Cool. The last one is societies. So societies are a DLC based thing. So if you don't have this, I'm pretty sure they're DLC based. If you don't have this tab, then that's why. And if I just click on the list of societies, there's a whole whole raft of them, and they all do different things, and they're very flavoursome. They create event chains, all sorts of cool stuff can happen. I'll give you a quick example from one of my playthroughs. I've had characters that have followed the Lucifer Zone path and become devil worshippers, and then the dark gods have kind of kept them alive long after they had any business being alive. I had a character that had no arms, like one leg, missing eye, and like just all of the injuries, but lived to be like in his 90s, and the only thing that was keeping him alive was the dark power. So it's kind of a little bit less quote unquote realistic. So the rest of the game is quite serious and historical, and this goes a little bit kind of like wacky in some places. Some of the other ones are less there, but yeah, it's a little bit mystical and I don't want to say silly. It's fun within its own right, and it offers quite a lot of roleplay, but it's definitely not needed to have a fun playthrough. But that's what that does there. So I did say that we were going to deal with those alerts, but I think we might leave it there for now because, what? We're over an hour, and that's a lot to take in one session. So I'm going to cut and do a third video. So initially when I did this, it was 2 videos, and I guess they were longer. But I'm going to do a third video for this, and in the next one we will actually unpause the game in the next video. I assure you, we will unpause the game. We will discuss a few other concepts that I maybe haven't had time to cover. We will deal with this last alert. We will get a wife, and we will start some intrigue and start kicking our realm off into the right direction. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you're learning how Crusader Kings 2 works. And yeah, thank you. I will see you in the next one.